What's that, Sergio? You want us to start a new podcast? All right. Oh, hello everybody. I didn't see you come in. My name is William Bibbiani. I am a film critic for various publications, including Crave Online and IGN. Everybody calls me Bibbs.
My name is Witney Seibold. I am also a film critic of some note. I'm a gadfly in the critical community.
A gad about gaddis.
I can type as a gadfly.
Yeah.
And I do also write for various websites around this great big internet of ours.
And
including IGN
yeah.
and Nerdist and Legion of Leia and a few other sites as well.
Okay.
Whoever will have me.
Yeah. And you know who has us now? The Schmoes Know podcast network on iTunes and SK Plus on YouTube.
SK Plus network. This is our debut episode.
Yeah.
We are newly printed, number 1, volume 2, I guess you could call us, over here as Critically Acclaimed. So welcome to Critically Acclaimed. This is kind of the child, or the continuation, the Doctor... what is he? Regeneration. The Doctor Who regeneration.
Sure.
Of the B-Movies podcast.
From whence we hailed.
From whence we hailed.
We were hosts of the B-Movies podcast over at Crave Online for over 6 years and over 400 episodes weekly, including bonus episodes.
So sometimes more than weekly.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun. We interviewed a lot of amazing people. We reviewed a lot of amazing movies, good and bad. And, it came to a close rather unceremoniously last August, and we had a lot of people, bless you, wondering, when are you going to come back? Because we have another podcast, Cancel Too Soon, where we review TV shows that lasted only one season or less. But that's really retro and kind of a niche market. People wanted us to review movies again, which was really nice of you to say. You could have just let us disappear into the background.
It's also something we wanted to do. We're critics by trade, and we just have a passion for this form. So we were eager to start talking about new films again.
Yeah, and it took a little while to find the right home for it. But I want to say right off the bat, bless Christian Harloff. For being very inviting. Many years ago, he actually, we were in talks to join an earlier version of the Schmoes network. And it just didn't work out. We had a couple of ideas, but they were already taken, or it was menial trivia stuff.
It was not yet Kismet.
No. But when the B-Movies podcast folded, he came to us and said that we could have a home over at the Schmoes, and we had to figure out a few details. But the details are figured out, and now we are here as Critically Acclaimed, which is also the name of our trivia team on the Movie Trivia Schmoedown.
That's right. We have fought 2 matches together. We won one, we lost one.
Yep. Lost one barely.
We trounced the first one, and we barely lost the second one.
1 point with a really big score. I don't feel too bad about that, to be perfectly honest.
And I feel like our opponent's last question was very easy.
It was cartoonishly easy, but them's the breaks.
Them's the breaks.
Them's the breaks.
Yeah, you get the easy one, you get the hard one. It's just a matter of chance.
When we came on the Schmoedown as Critically Acclaimed, a lot of people were like, why are they Critically Acclaimed? Why aren't they like Cancel Too Soon or the B-Movies podcast? And the reason was we kind of saw the writing on the wall, and we kind of wanted to start building a new brand, and we knew that sooner or later we wanted to do something as Critically Acclaimed, and it worked out a little faster than we had originally thought, but here we are.
We were really fast-tracked, and Christian has been really instrumental in this. So thank you, bless you, from the bottoms of our hearts, Christian Harloff, for hosting us and giving you, dear listeners, a chance to hear us spread our unpopular opinions again.
So there's a lot of people out there who hopefully are coming in and joining us from our previous audience who didn't already listen to the Schmoes, but those also a lot of you who maybe haven't heard us do podcasts before. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our background and also what we do here on this podcast.
We have for the fans of the B-Movies podcast, this isn't the same shtick. Even though
similar.
We are using the same theme song, you might have noticed.
Yeah, well, that's
because that's ours.
Well, it's my sister's, and she gave it to us. My sister is the lead singer of a band called Clutch Douglas. That's Douglas with 2 S's if you want to go to their website or check them out on iTunes. And she very generously wrote us a theme song that even references us by name. That is hers to do with as she likes, and she graciously told us we could keep using it for a sense of continuity because a lot of people Seibold said they really liked the theme song, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
We'll keep the theme song. If you enough of you write in saying you're sick of the theme song, we'll keep using it for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
But
we have this theme song.
Maybe we'll remix it or something.
I don't know, maybe. But we'll still be doing movie reviews, brand new movie reviews. We'll be doing retrospectives, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We'll be talking a little bit about the news. We have a lot of catch-up to do with reviews this week. Probably won't talk too much about it right now. And we have a letters column where you can write in, and we will debate topics that you send to us, read top 10 lists that you write, answer debate questions or philosophical questions about the industry or questions about who we are and what we like, what we think of certain movies. We're really kind of open books. We have to be, if you'll recall on the B-Movies podcast, we got backtracked. We got backlogged real fast because our wonderful listeners liked to write long letters, and we really wanted to read them all. We might have to be a little bit more selective as in the future. We might have to only read a part of a letter once in a while.
Just so we can not let that backlog happen again.
We can't keep doing 3-hour letters episodes.
For the new listeners, when we closed out the B-Movies podcast, we caught up with every letter we had, and I think it took us, 5-6 hours?
I think it was 4.
4 hours.
I think it was 4 hours.
It took us a long time.
Yeah.
And we got through every last one. At the end of that episode, you can hear us both, getting very, very hoarse. We're drinking the hot water with the lemon, but we're getting pretty hoarse.
At the end of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Someone's got to listen to this letters column. Someone's got to listen.
It's just the lifeblood of this country is all.
So we still want you to write into us, and you can write into us, write in right now. The new letters column is critically acclaimed fans at gmail.com. Critically acclaimed at gmail.com was taken. As well as any other reasonable, sort of derivation.
We could have misspelled it, with a K or something.
But that would just be confusing. It's critically acclaimed, properly spelled, fans at gmail.com. And we got a few letters already. We made the announcement on our other podcast, so we got a few letters already. We'll read them at the end of the episode. But we also have a new feature in which we're going to let you, the listener, decide what we are going to review every single week, in addition to new releases.
Yeah, the shtick is you provide the first half of a double feature, and we provide the second half. So these are two films that will be paired up and ostensibly will go well together.
Yeah.
However, the film you get to pick is going to be a notorious one.
Or at the very least, a generally... it's going to be bad.
A bad film, something with a bad reputation.
It doesn't have to be notorious. It could be obscure, but something that is considered terrible.
And again, considered terrible. I actually like some of these movies that some people have been suggesting.
And we'll talk about that when that happens. But then once you give us the bad movies, and you'll get to vote every week on the Schmoville Facebook page. If you're not part of it already, join up. New polls will be up every Sunday. You get to vote for the bad movie, and then Witney and I will choose a good movie that will sort of pair interestingly with it. It might not be obvious. It might be kind of weird, but hopefully once you watch them back to back, you'll see what we're getting at.
We're essentially enophiles here. You give us a really trashy meal, and we'll get you the most expensive wine that complements that meal.
Pretty much, yeah.
You give us the crap chili cheeseburger, and we'll give you the Pinot Noir.
And it's something I think we've all thought about. What if we ran a movie theater? What double features would we show? And some of them are really obvious. You'll show your two favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, but then you want to watch something just weird, and I don't see the connection, and that's might be some of the things that we'll do right now. The first winner, we're going to get to this actually. We're going to do it first or second. What's the plan?
We'll do it second. I think we should review the new films first.
Okay,
because those are most topical.
Okay, fair enough. And then we'll save. So this will be your sort of appetizer, and then the main course of awesome will be. The double feature, and then at the end, as a sort of aperitif, we'll read some letters.
I've got it. We're a hipster bar. The new reviews are the hot new beers that are on tap. The new ones that they're rotating through at this hipster bar. Whatever IPA is hot. And we get to have the new thing.
Yeah.
Then you give us a crappy meal. We give you a really great wine.
You give us a crappy meal at this bar that we own? They bring in a crappy meal and feed us?
Yes, this is a...
We're going to be very full by the end of the night.
This is a very strained analogy already.
Yeah, it sucks.
But I'm running with it. That's what I do. I make strange analogies and I just run.
Now, but before we even get started on that, just real fast, who the fuck are you?
Oh, I guess we can cuss on this one?
Yeah, I think that's my understanding that we can.
All right.
Who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm Whitney Seibold. I have been reviewing films since my college newspaper back in the mid-90s.
Wow.
I'm pushing 40. You don't have to do the math.
Well, what was it? What was the first film you ever reviewed?
It was I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Nice.
That was the first one for my college newspaper.
What did you give it?
I gave it a one Scream ripoff up. Like, I recognized it right. It's like, this is just a Scream knockoff.
This is Kevin Williamson. I don't know if it's a knockoff.
I suppose so, but just I understood that this was the new trend right away. It's like, okay, Scream was great. Oh, no, now we're just going to get 100 of these, aren't we?
Yes, we were.
I didn't realize that until I saw I Know What You Did Last Summer. I reviewed a bunch of films. I was very long-winded. They were very generous about giving me a huge amount of space in the college newspaper.
Nice.
I realized at college that I liked films more than theater, which was what I was majoring in. So I came back to LA, started studying film and writing film reviews for local newspapers. Got published in the Santa Monica Mirror. Ooh. This was back when papers were made of paper. I wrote for NoHo LA. I was the film section editor there for a couple years.
That's cool. Yeah.
And after a while, after that paper folded, they were really ahead of the curve in newspapers closing. They closed really early on.
They foresaw that trend.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So get in early.
So they didn't even tell me. Like, I just got my issue in the mail. They mailed me an issue every week, and it just said final. There was a sticker on it that said final issue. It's like, oh, gee, okay. I guess
I'm out of a job.
Guess I'm out. Yeah. So I maintained a blog for a little bit, which is still up. You can read some of my really horrible chicken scratchings over at that blog, which I called 3 Cheers for Darkened Years, before I met you, and you hooked me up with Geekscape, and I started writing for Geekscape for a while, and then you also dragged me along to Crave Online, and have been dragging me along ever since.
Yep, kicking and screaming the whole time.
Thank you for allowing me to be your albatross.
Yeah. You're the Sid to my Marty Perkins?
Jim to my Marty.
My Jim to my Marty Perkins. I know I'm doing.
Marlon Perkins.
I got that line way wrong. Okay. Failed. Boom. Critically decried. My name is William Bibbiani. I'm a film critic. I've been a professional film critic since about 2010. Before that, I went to film school. Did a little work in various parts of the industry. Nothing cool. Nothing exciting. I didn't direct anything.
I was a development executive for Roger Corman for a couple of years.
Were you a development executive, or were you a glorified intern?
I say executive. I was not even a glorified intern. I was just an intern.
Yeah, okay.
They gave me bad scripts and they had me write them up. I read so much crap at that job.
Yeah, let's executive.
Sorry, development executive.
But yeah, I worked as a development intern as well, and that was fun. Read a lot of crap.
It's a rough gig. It really is.
I have a degree in screenwriting from UCLA. I've written some scripts. Some of them got around. Nothing ever happened to any of them, so that's that. But you know what?
And if you listen long enough, you'll hear details of these scripts.
Oh yeah, the ones that we read that are terrible. Yeah, but honestly, I'm glad I ended up where I did, because I'm happier doing this.
Yeah.
The industry itself can be very fickle, very toxic, and I love a lot of the stuff that they do. I still write about it constantly, but I like being able to be a little bit more on the outside and being able to comment on it more honestly and fairly. I think
as a critic, we can be advocates and we can be more open about finding new things, and we can actually have higher standards.
Yeah.
When you work in the industry, there's this sort of pattern of needing to be enthusiastic about specific things.
Yeah.
We are not required to do that as critics.
We don't work for a studio, nor do we define ourselves by our fandom. A lot of really, really great people.
Apart from just our general cinephilia.
Right, we love movies. And indeed, you'll find over time, if you're new, that there are things that we genuinely just are fans of. But we try not to define ourselves by our fandom, because once you do that, you sort of run the risk of blinding yourself.
Yeah, you paint yourself into a corner a little bit.
Yeah, because you're defining yourself by the thing you love rather than defining the things you love by who you are, which I think is the way it should go. Because if you can't look at like a franchise, or like if you look at like a movie that's coming up and you've already decided that you're going to love it because you love the franchise, yes, you're right, that's fine. But as a critic, that's not helpful. You have to sort of be willing to sort of look at where it's been, look at where it's going, and then judge each film on an individual level and just sort of deal with whether or not it's good. So when a lot of people say like, oh, I'm really looking forward to the new Star Wars, I hope it's good.
Yeah,
maybe it won't be. I don't know. I have to keep that distance.
We've talked about this before, about how people are like buying the Porg dresses and like BB-8 purses before they see the film.
Suck?
Yeah, what if you hate those things?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cute design, sure, but yeah, what if you hate the movie? Are you going to be... But
and then there's no reason to assume you'll hate it, but there's no reason to assume you'll love it either. It's just another movie right now.
At the same time, though, a lot of people are watching something like Suicide Squad, and they're still dressing like that version of Harley Quinn. So I guess they just like the design of the character.
Right. You can also love a character and not love a movie as well. You can love individual pieces of things. We like being able to have longer, more serious conversations about these other than it's awesome. And that's one thing I love about doing this podcast, and I love about interacting with the listeners of our podcasts and our followers on Twitter on a more in-depth level than simply, this is awesome or this sucks. Like, I really want to have a conversation about this with you, Witney Seibold, and with you in the audience. So, again, we encourage you to write in. If you leave comments, we'll keep an eye on them, but we're going to focus the podcast interactions on emails because I find it's a little bit easier to go in depth and to really think about what you're writing and articulate it.
They also channel a little bit more directly to us.
Yeah.
But as I said, we appeared on a Schmoes Know video cast.
The Schmoes main show.
The Schmoes main show.
Yeah, the live show.
And we had a conversation kind of about this, about how fandom can kind of blind you a little bit.
Yeah.
And I said this on that show, if you missed it, was that I feel that fandom is a really great bridge, but it should not be your destination. Staying in one spot and obsessing about one particular series of films or one TV show or one franchise actually is the greatest first step to becoming a critic, because it teaches you to kind of examine and look at things closely. If you live with it long enough, you're very slowly learning how to look deeper and deeper and deeper, and you can spend time with a character and see how they affect the franchise as a whole.
You start thinking about every decision that goes into the process, every line of dialogue, every bit of background, everything.
You start to see how this thing comes together, and by doing that with something you love, you can now start looking at things that you don't love yet, and start seeing how those things come together and be a little bit more analytical and a little bit more appreciative of the complexities and the ins and outs of what's going into that.
Yeah.
And it actually teaches you how to analyze. But if you stay at the one thing, you're not
going to apply that anywhere else.
Yeah, you're not going to use those skills in a bigger, more meaningful way.
Anyway, so we're going to have a lot of fun talking about that. And since then, I've written for Crave Online and Coming Soon and Fangoria and all over, basically. And maybe for you if you're hiring. But now we're doing these podcasts, and the podcasts are where we live and breathe, and so kind of what we love doing most, honestly, if I'm being honest.
It really is.
Because you get to really get in depth. So let's get started with our new release, movie reviews. We had on the B Movies podcast a ratings system. It was very simple. We rated everything because we were the B Movies podcast.
Which we actually crowdsourced. A fan came up with that one.
We did, and they were great.
I think it was Jason Fozzie Nelson.
I think it was.
To give him a little credit.
But it was a system where we rated everything on a scale of B+ to B-.
Because we were the B Movies podcast.
Yeah, so if it's just okay, B. If it's bad, B-. If it's good, B+. The most you can do beyond that is be emphatic about it. But we're not the B Movies podcast anymore. Our new podcast begins with the letter C. So,
our new system, which is totally not new,
is going to be we're going to review everything on a scale of C+ to C-. C+ is a rave review. C- is a disturbing pan. And the reason why we even do that has actually very little to do with rating system itself. I find them very arbitrary. But when you want to have a longer conversation about the good and bad in a movie or any work of art, it's sometimes easy to get a little sidetracked and make it not entirely clear whether or not you're actually recommending it. And some people do use criticism that way. So we want to sort of cater to it. We want to include that as an element.
At least make it a little bit clear.
Okay.
Clearer.
Yeah.
So C+, we love it. C, it's all right.
All right, so there's a bunch of new releases this weekend, and we're going to jump right in. The first new film we're going to be reviewing is Kenneth Branagh's Murder on the Orient Express. Murder on the Orient Express is a film adaptation of Agatha Christie's classic murder mystery novel. It stars Hercule Poirot the greatest detective in the world.
Can you do that with a little bit more of his French flair?
Hercule Poirot.
Hercule Poirot, who has 2 mustaches in this film.
He does. By the way, he's Belgian, not French.
You're right.
Yeah. Damn right I'm right. But he's the most famous detective in the world. He starred in a series of stories by Agatha Christie. Many of them have been adapted to feature films and television, and Murder in the Orient Express has been adapted multiple times, including an Oscar-winning version directed by Sidney Lumet with an all-star cast that included Sean Connery, Ingrid Bergman, Albert Finney.
Anthony Perkins is in there.
Yeah, great adaptation. And elsewhere as well.
1974, that version. Now,
it's a great version.
It's a really well-known story, so a lot of people are going to go into Kenneth Branagh's version kind of knowing who'd done it already.
Yeah.
But maybe not. I'm not sure how many viewers are really familiar with Murder on the Orient Express.
Well, that's kind of interesting because it's kind of a throwback to a kind of murder mystery that isn't very popular right now. We have murder mysteries on TV every day, Law and Order, CSI. But we're not having these parlor room murder mysteries where people are sort of trapped in a location. There's a dead body. There's one detective. He interviews everybody. Someone tries to stab someone else in the dark, but we don't know who it is. And at the end, they put everyone in the room and they confront them with their lies, and we find out who did it. That's a great genre, but it's not popular right now.
In fact, Agatha Christie kind of spearheaded and laid down a blueprint for a very specific type of melodrama that was followed so closely for so long in feature films and on TV that it feels really old-fashioned now.
Yeah.
And not just because her books were written so long ago.
The 1920s and 30s.
It's because those tropes we've used them and we've used them up. We're kind of done with those tropes now.
But what I love about Agatha Christie's writing is that she's really ahead of her time when it comes to her portrayals of not just murder mysteries. She's fiercely intelligent and you're never ahead of it, even though she always plays fair. She's very witty. It's a very funny series of books that she wrote that are, even though there's malevolence there's a lot of very light social satire in terms of the characters who are keeping secrets, and their secrets often act out in terms of social or sexual repression, and she's very witty about it, and she never clubs you over the head with it unless someone literally got clubbed over the head and that's how they died. And so there's a reason why we keep going back to her. It's not just because the murder mysteries are fun. They are. It's because she has such wonderful characters and her stories had so much left to say. Murder on the Orient Express has one of the best hooks of any Agatha Christie, and indeed any murder mystery. There's the Orient Express. It was a beautiful train that traveled from, I think, Turkey to London.
It was where the high class, like the hoity-toity, the richest of the rich, traveled.
Yeah.
So this is a train with like butlers and a kitchen and really fancy, posh dining cars, and
it's got princesses and doctors and titans of industry.
Kenneth Branagh revels in the high class detail, just the beautiful suits, the beautiful posh interiors. That like he will stare at a taffeta curtain. He'll just sort of hang that in the background, these big, really comfortable looking leather seats. He wants you to feel what it's like to be a rich person traveling on the Orient Express.
Yeah.
And as such, he shot the film on 70mm film, which he did with Hamlet. I think that was the last film he did it with.
Yeah. And it's still relatively uncommon. The Hateful Eight did that. Dunkirk did that. The Master did that.
But it's very few filmmakers can get away with that. And if you're in certain markets, you can actually see it on 70mm film. They're projecting it that way, I think, at ArcLight Cinemas here in LA.
And if you can, you should, because it's a gorgeous medium.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's interesting because the story is so confined, but it's actually very vast in its scope. And Kenneth Branagh really wants to play with these toys. He wants to play with the toys, and he wants to just have a good time with his ensemble cast. And I think this is one of the reasons why, even though this is a story we've seen done before, and I think arguably better. I think the Sidney Lumet version is pretty impeccable. Which is fine. I think it was really clever to get Kenneth Branagh to do it, because what he became famous for doing is restaging plays that have been restaged in different ways thousands of times. He found just a new sort of way to do it, a fun way to do it, and really what we have here is it's still a dynamite murder mystery. Now we've got another dynamite cast, and we're just going to let them play. Yeah, and he's going to play, and his storytelling, his sense of humor, his brash performance. He injects a little action to it, and it never feels too phony. It's really great.
He takes the bombast of the theater and manages to translate that to cinema very well. Rather than, a lot of people who adapt theater tend to make the camera very still. And he realizes that theater is very alive when you're in a theater watching these people storm up out the stage and asking these dramatic questions and feeling like people holding their breaths in the room with you can translate to the cinema. And he does it by turning up the music and actually moving the camera around a lot. I feel like his background in theater and his background with adapting Shakespeare really aids in something like this, because now it feels like a classical play production. So even if you know the ending, it's sort of like watching Dracula. You know every beat of Dracula, but if it's done well, you're going to revel in how great it is. I remember hearing some interviews with Kenneth Branagh when he was making Hamlet, and how people go to see Hamlet so they can speak along with the actors. He knows how to sort of, like, everybody knows the to be or not to be speech. He's said he's made productions where he can hear audience members whispering along with the to be or not to be speech. So he appreciates that the audience is there for something that is familiar, and he's just going to not play, because it's not necessarily a jaunty light film, but he's going to give audiences something that they can interact with.
I disagree, because I do think, even though there's a darkness here to it, obviously someone is brutally murdered, I think actually it is in many respects a very light film, because he's having so much fun telling this story. There's one shot, it's later in the film, it's not a spoiler, but where he's got this whole cast, and again, the cast is, you got Daisy Ridley, you got Michelle Pfeiffer, you got Judi Dench, you got Willem Dafoe, you got all these incredible actors. And when he gets them all, he finally gets them all in one shot where it's not in a corridor and they got to be like lined up, like almost like a rail shooter, like in a video game. He can finally get like a wide shot of them all. He can't resist. He does the Last Supper.
The Last Supper.
And I chuckle because it's funny.
With
because,
the same table, they're all posed the same way.
Yeah. He knows that he's having a good time with this, and you can tell because as always, he gives himself the juiciest role, and he
of course
bites into it, and pulp flies everywhere. And that's something else I really enjoy about this. I love Albert Finney's version of Poirot. I know there's other versions of Poirot that other people love very much. I think
it's David Suchet, who famously played it on TV.
I think so. Yeah. I love Kenneth Branagh's version. Kenneth Branagh's version is hilarious. He really doubles down on the obsessive-compulsive aspect of the character, which, speaking as someone who has obsessive-compulsive disorder, I actually totally sympathize. And it's kind of nice to see a heroic version of that.
There's a scene early on where he steps in a pile of dung, and he looks down, he's like, well, it's not so much the dung, it's just that now my feet are uneven, so he steps in it with his other foot, just so his feet feel kind of the same.
That's a great character. I love characters who are just so dedicated to their nature. And one of the best things about Murder on the Orient Express is that, and I can't get into it without going into details about the solution to the mystery, so I won't. But it challenges his nature in a way that a lot of the other Poirot stories don't.
We kind of skimmed over the story, but there's been a murder,
and an avalanche, so everyone's trapped.
And there's an avalanche. The train is stopped in this remote place. Nobody can go anywhere, and there's been a murder. Somebody's been stabbed a bunch, and as Poirot investigates, he interviews them one by one,
and everyone gets their scene,
each in a different location. So we got a lot of visual variety, and he finds sort of all of the connections they might have to sort of this family that we never actually really see.
A previous event. There's something connecting people on the train, and it's unexpected.
And it's not as contrived as you might think. It actually plays really well visually. It doesn't rely too heavily on flashbacks. It relies on the actors. Kenneth Branagh trusts those actors, and they're all great. I feel like Kenneth Branagh has a really canny skill of getting good performances, like classical performances, out of actors who aren't necessarily classical performers. You look at someone like Billy Crystal in Hamlet. It's like Billy Crystal.
Yeah, it's a weird choice, but he's great in it.
He's great. He's the best gravedigger I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's
not a guarantee. He couldn't get a good performance out of Robin Williams in that movie, but that was a nothing role.
Yeah, Osric is not. Anything cast Gerard Depardieu is like a guy who has 4 lines. So what? Why do you cast Gerard Depardieu?
Because we could get him.
It's distracting, is what it is. But yeah, he's got someone like Josh Gad, and Josh Gad gives a good performance. He actually plays kind of a heavy type role.
It's been a good time for Josh Gad. I think people are starting to realize that he's got more range than I think people wanted to have him play as like the nerdy, funny guy. And And I think he's, with this and Marshall, he's starting to enter a more dramatic realm, and he's great. He's really, really talented. This is a gorgeous movie. It's a very well-acted movie. It's a very fun and funny movie.
I really liked Leslie Odom Jr.
Yeah, he's great.
He was really great.
Yeah. You know him from Hamilton.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but assuming you got tickets, which is no guarantee.
If you had $4,000 to blow, you could take the family to Hamilton and see Leslie Odom Jr. He was really great. Daisy Ridley's really great. I didn't recognize Daisy Ridley. Like,
oh, no shit.
Yeah, because I'd only ever seen her in Star Wars The Force Awakens. So here she is looking like glam and a half in this movie. They do up her hair and makeup, and she looks really fantastic.
I feel like there's a certain group of people who are sort of hesitant about costume dramas, and because they're sort of seen as very stuffy. And I think that there are some very stuffy costume dramas, but there are some costume dramas that are so alive. And Kenneth Branagh's been really good at them for a lot of his career. And this is another one where I don't care if this is a period piece about rich people trapped on a train. I think you're going to have fun. You're going to have an entertaining time watching this very skillfully crafted. Again, I think the Sidney Lumet version's even better. But there's multiple great versions of Hamlet out there as well, so I don't care.
The Sidney Lumet version, I think, just has the virtue of having come first.
But it's also gorgeously filmed.
It's I think beautiful. Some of the Albert Finney's Poirot is a little bit more slapsticky in that version, but Kenneth Branagh is, he giggles and storms about a lot. Like
he has a yelling bit about fudge that is just hilarious.
What is this chocolate? What is the English word?
You have fudged all over it. It's so great.
And there's a running gag where he's reading, of all things, A Tale of Two Cities, and it's cracking him up. I'm wondering.
It's not a funny book.
I read A Tale of Two Cities. It's not hilarious, but he's sort of savoring Dickens' language, so I can understand why this obsessive compulsive guy would just crack up reading.
So
Dickens.
It sounds like we both like this one.
Yeah,
that's great.
I really dug it.
I was worried about it because it was, it's a huge release. Obviously, they want it to be like at least up for like production design and costume design Oscars.
Oscars,
they're saving it for the end of the year, I think, for that reason. And there was just no buzz about it, and just the whispers were just like, why are they holding off on this? This is a huge cast. Is it bad? It might be bad. Kenneth Branagh has made some bad movies, like
he's made some.
Frankenstein is not. I watched it again recently. It's not great.
I'm a fan of Frankenstein.
There's stuff I like in it. Robert De Niro is great in it. But the movie itself is a bit slapdash.
You contrast the monster stuff, which is really sort of calm and peaceful, with all of Frankenstein stuff, which is like wild and crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of. I think he did it deliberately.
Right.
But yeah, he's made some stink. Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit is just
terrible.
Bad.
I don't blame him because that script sucked. That's another one where the only good role in that movie is his own. He plays this erudite Russian villain.
But wasn't a good role that very much. And yeah, I'm not a fan of Thor, but I know a lot of people are.
I think he brought a lot of good stuff to Thor. I think he brought. I think
the only good things in Thor were his responsibility. But yeah,
well, I think
and Tom Hiddleston.
Well, I think it's good casting for the most part, and I think he brought to what could have been an almost unpalatably ridiculous idea. Space Thor coming down to Earth and reenacting the Masters of the Universe movie where it takes place mostly in a small town.
Yeah.
That could have been annoying as hell. And I think Kenneth Branagh injected it with levity, a sense of old-fashioned adventure, but also just parlor room drama. All of that, like, just, Dad didn't love me stuff that would have been death if anyone who didn't have a theatrical background did it. I think he made it work.
I feel like he could have gone a lot further with Thor. Thor is him just sort of playing it safe.
All right.
I thought his Cinderella was pretty good, though.
I like Cinderella a lot, actually. That's one of the few live-action Disney remakes that I think are actually, like, as good, if not better, than the original. I mean, Cinderella is so important and influential as a work of animation, but I think as a movie, it's kind of simplistic, and I think he brought a little bit more to it. But we're getting a little off track. We'll do our full reviews of all the new ones at the end. I want to talk about a movie I saw and you didn't.
Okay.
I actually saw several films you didn't, so I'll keep these relatively short. Daddy's Home 2 sucks.
Oh, golly, I could have told you that.
Well, I actually had to see it and decide for myself.
I didn't actually see this one. So,
I saw Daddy's Home
because
1.
I didn't have to.
Sometimes you don't have to. I seek out everything. Daddy's Home 1 was starred Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. Will Ferrell is the stepfather to Mark Wahlberg's kids.
And he doesn't have any of his own kids.
Not until like the end of the movie. Like he hasn't. There are no biological kids of Will Ferrell's. And then Mark Wahlberg comes back into his life, and Mark Wahlberg is extremely macho. And Will Ferrell is extremely sensitive. And he doesn't know how to respond to this very potent bullying presence in his life, and that leads to drama. Now, that's a perfectly okay setup for a movie, but...
Well, here's the movie you get out of that. The woman who married both of those men has got to be kind of interesting.
I know, and Linda Cardellini, to her credit, she plays it better than I think almost anyone could. Because she doesn't have a lot to work with, but she's not... She does talk about how I changed and what I want from people has changed, but she's still undeniably attracted to what Mark Wahlberg represented because she used to be married to him. So that character actually is almost interesting, but the movie is incredibly by the numbers. And it's just, if you've read any book on screenwriting, you know, everything that's going to happen throughout the entire thing, that's not terrible. It wouldn't be terrible if it was funny. I just didn't laugh at it. I found most of the humor either mean-spirited or just really obvious.
And this is still Daddy's Home 1.
This is Daddy's Home 1. Right. Daddy's Home 2 has all the same problems, but it also has something that makes it even worse. It's very formulaic. You can kind of see where every scene is going. A lot of the jokes in it are the ideas for the jokes, and then they never go further than that. They never spin them in an unexpected direction. It just basically, and then Will Ferrell gets hit on the head. Okay,
great.
It's good for a 5-year-old, but like
the Adam Sandler school of comedy.
The parents have to take the kid to that. The parents are going to want something out of it too. It's also just very mean. In the plot, Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell are now very close friends. Mark Wahlberg has discovered his sensitive side, and they're able to actually just connect on a closer level, and they're really good dads. And their wives are good with the situation. The kids, however, don't like being shuttled off from house to house all the time, so they decide to have their first together Christmas. All the families together, just sharing Christmas together, and you know that's a hotbed for mischief and mishaps and shenanigans, and another perfectly decent setup. And then on top of that, Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell's dads are visiting, and that adds a new layers. Also, good setup. So Will Ferrell has a wonderfully close relationship with his father, played by John Lithgow, who is great in everything. And Mark Wahlberg has an incredibly antagonistic relationship with his dad, played by Mel Gibson. Now, Mel Gibson is an actor and filmmaker who comes with a lot of baggage.
That's for sure.
Because he has said and done some really horrible things in his personal life. He's also, and we have to sort of reconcile this at some point, he's also made some good movies, you know, and you just have to...
There's a reason he's a movie star.
Yeah, Road Warrior is still good, even though Mel Gibson is a shithead. So, they bring him on because it seems like he'd be good casting for the father of a macho jerk, who wants his son to be more of a macho jerk and less of the sensitive man his son has become. But what happens is, especially when you cast someone who is just as, sinister looking as Mel Gibson, he's handsome, but he's got this, evil glare to him, he's playing Satan. He just comes in and destroys everything. He hurts everyone's lives. He rips apart relationships. He teaches, one of the little kids is at the age where he started to notice girls, and it's time to have the talk. And Will Ferrell starts having the talk with the kid, and it's telling the kid an absurd story about why the friend zone is the best place to be, and it's backwards on a million different levels. But then Mel Gibson and Mark Wahlberg show up and say, "Here's what you do. It's Christmas. Go up there, shove some mistletoe over her head, kiss her, and then I believe the quote is, and then slap her on the caboose."
Great. So you're teaching a child sexual assault at an early age.
Good. And the kid, bless the child at first, says, "I don't want to do that. I just want to be nice." I'm like, okay, good. At the very least, the movie understands that that's bad. And he's an evil person telling a child who, at the very least, telling a child insanely backwards things. And at worst, teaching a child to be incredibly toxic. And I thought for a minute, maybe the movie is just going to, at the end, we're going to say, all of this was bad. All of this was bad. And at the end, the movie kind of supports that was a good way to handle young girls. And I'm watching this, I'm like, this is just evil and cruel. I don't understand. And as a result, it's just not funny. It's a bullying, mean movie with very simplistic jokes that aren't even funny in a vacuum. I laughed I think 10 times in this 100-minute movie. And they're all about pretty minor things. There's one bit where all of the dads, there's one thing they can all agree on: no one touches the thermostat. They put it up 2 degrees. Do you have any idea how much that's going to cost at this Airbnb? I'm like, oh, that's actually a funny joke, because that's a dad joke. But when the joke is about how awful people can be to each other and there's no other layer on top of it, it's just unpalatable.
Okay, so I haven't seen this movie, but I've seen the preview 1,000 times. It was playing before just about everything. And I've seen a lot of Adam Sandler movies, and what you're describing to me seems like something that comes out of the same school.
Yeah.
Where Adam Sandler tends to gravitate toward humor of cruelty. Mocking other people is a great source of humor for Adam Sandler.
Yeah, look at Grown Ups 2 is a great example of this.
Like
very mean movie.
Belittling and being mean to an other, like some weirdo, like a character whose eyes don't point in the same direction, or somebody who's overweight. Mocking them is a great source of comfort and humor for Adam Sandler's films.
And I think that what they try to do
and
is
it also sells through that a certain type of masculinity that is meant to be celebrated and vaunted and
I don't know about
lionized.
That. I think at best what we've got here is people who think they need to do less work than they do. Because I think at the end of the Daddy's Home movies, and indeed a lot of those Adam Sandler movies, they try to sell this idea of inclusiveness. Oh, this is all in good fun, or we all had growing up to do. And yet at the same time, the movies are predicated on the idea that all of this is funny. All of this meanness is entertainment for the whole family, and I don't think that's really fair. Now, again,
the meanness is something we should be relating to.
Yeah, that's my point. Is that's what they're trying to sell, and I can't. And I know some people like these movies, and I'm not trying to tell you can't. I'm trying to explain why I can't, and why I have a problem with it. Someone took me to task for my review of Daddy's Home 2 and said that it sounds like you were biased against this type of humor. And I'm like, I'm not actually biased against this type of humor. If it's funny, it's funny. I love a lot of Will Ferrell movies. But this particular movie isn't funny for these reasons. Now, if you disagree with me, cool. Because I think the purpose of a review, I think people misunderstand how film criticism works. I think they think a good film critic will agree with you 100% of the time. I don't think that's true. I think a good film critic will simply explain honestly why they feel the way that they honestly feel about it, hopefully in a way that's entertaining and informative. And based on that review, whether or not you agree with them, you can decide if you like it. So if everything I've just told you about Daddy's Home 2 and why I don't like it makes you go, oh, well, he just doesn't get it, well, now you have the information you need to know that you'll like it. And that's okay, I think. I personally find it a very mean, gross movie, but I can appreciate that there are people who do get it and hopefully don't take anything mean away from it, but all I can see is the meanness. So I'm giving it a rating later that's not very favorable. Why don't you tell me a little bit about a hopefully better movie, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. And trigger warning for this movie has a very intense plot.
3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is opening in limited release this week. It's only, I think it's only in 4 theaters, but it's opening wider in a couple more weeks.
Yeah. Oscar run. Start small, build buzz.
This is the Oscar. It's one of the big Oscar indies, and Frances McDormand is the star here, and she's kind of a shoo-in for a nomination if you're following that sort of thing.
Wow, great.
She plays the mother of a son and a daughter. The daughter, several months previous, was brutally raped and murdered. In Ebbing, Missouri, and the police have not come to her in 7 months' time with any new clues, and she feels that the local police are not doing their jobs, that they're just sort of slacking off. And the local police chief is played by Woody Harrelson, and he's kind of antagonistic, but he's really sort of pragmatic about how he goes about his job. Some of the other local cops are buffoonishly evil, and presented as comedically buffoonishly evil, especially the one played by Sam Rockwell, who is great in everything. Even when he's playing this sort of toxic, admittedly racist cop, he's sort of this comedic figure. And so in order to combat that these cops are not doing anything to investigate the death of her daughter, she puts down a heck of a lot of money to rent 3 billboards just outside of town. One that says, rather forthrightly, raped while dying.
Jesus!
Yeah, and the next one says, no arrests yet. And then the third one calls out the police chief by name.
Wow.
So yeah, she has been overwhelmed by rage, and she's had it. And this film is very much about that rage. It's strangely timely because we live in an age where we're getting sick of this crap.
Well, hopefully hold on. I'm going to say it's strangely timely. It, sadly, has always been.
Well, sadly, it is timely, but it feels really timely this year, this month.
The conversation about it is so much louder than it's been in so long, and I think it's important.
And a lot of people are sort of have been really good about trying to keep their composure in the face of a lot of outrageous crimes, and that has allowed a lot of discomfort to continue. And Frances McDormand plays a character. Her name is Edith, I think. She has had enough of that. She doesn't want to have composure anymore. She is allowing the rage to take over, and it's about the things that can be accomplished and the horrors that can kind of result from allowing your anger to take hold. Now, you notice when you have, like...
She plays in a character named Mildred.
Mildred, sorry.
Right.
Another a character that would be a friend of my grandmother. But when you have sort of political conversations, you can tell that people are trying not to let their anger take over, because then it's only met by more anger, and then pride gets involved, and it's no longer about your point. It's just about your anger. But you have that rage. It's still inside of you, and it has to be let out at some point. And I think we're seeing a lot of things going on in the culture right now where people are finally just letting their rage pour forth, and how a lot of people are reacting very toxically to that. So this is sort of a microcosm drama about this phenomenon, which is why it feels so timely.
Yeah, but it's and on top of that, it's really good.
On top of that, it's really good, and it's hilarious. This is from the...
What, really?
Yeah, this is from the same guy who did In Bruges, who has...
Martin McDonagh.
Martin McDonagh, who has this kind of way of presenting you with, like, really toxic, angry, violent characters, but giving them a lot of really funny dialogue. So even though this is a lot of dark anger issues, it's all presented with a lot of wit and a lot of charm, and you really like all of the characters. Even the really hateable ones have moments of kind of catharsis and redemption. So we get to see this sort of funny portrait of all of these very varied character types that exist within this little town of Ebbing, Missouri. So it plays with a lot of hayseed humor. More than anything, just watching Frances McDormand just let loose and start cussing at people is hilarious. She's funny. She knows how to play this character. She played a really similar character in that movie Friends with Money. I'm not sure if you ever saw that one. Where she just has had enough with all of her rich friends and how they're all just sort of empty-headed know-nothings. She goes to the farmer's market, and there's all these rich people driving these big, expensive cars going down to Santa Monica, California, to the farmer's market, and they get so enraged because there's so much traffic and the fruit is so expensive, and she nearly gets into a car wreck with one of these people, and all she yells is, "You're buying fruit!" Like, you're just getting fruit. This is not important in any conceivable way.
Oh, my God.
So watching Frances McDormand lash out is a delight, because she does it with such skill and such aplomb. It was a really great thing to watch. There's a lot of deep stuff going on, but even if you're not going to start jibing with all of the underground anger politic, you can at least enjoy the lightness and the fun that the filmmakers are having with this rage that everyone can recognize.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance to make.
Yeah.
The idea of taking something very serious that isn't funny at all, but incorporating enough humanity into it that you can have those moments. Turning
it into sort of this dark comedy.
That's impressive. I feel bad that I saw Daddy's Home 2 instead. Let's move on. So there's a new film from Joachim Trier
I missed this one. I'm really sorry.
This is a new film. It's called Thelma. It is a Norwegian horror movie, very much in the vein of Carrie. It is about a college student. She is off on her own for the very first time, and she starts having feelings that she doesn't know what to do with, because she was raised in a very constrictive environment. If you saw Raw last year, similar setup.
It was this year.
So it was this year, right? It premiered in Cannes the year before that. So
it was released in February.
But you're right. You're right. If you saw Raw, similar setup. I think Raw is a better movie, though, because Raw has a little bit more passion in this. Thelma is a very icy film about a woman who has sort of committed to her own personal repression after growing up in a very Christian household. She wants to have a romantic relationship with with a fellow student. But she seems very uncomfortable with the fact that she's in love with a woman. On top of that, every time she starts really having serious feelings and passionate emotions, things start happening. Birds fly into windows, chandeliers above tilt, even though there's no reason for them to do it. And you realize, is this Carrie, but in college? And kinda. Kind of is.
Carrie the college years?
Yeah, like Carrie the college years or Matilda the college years. There's this small subgenre of, psychic young people who, through various forms of repression or oppression, sort of bottle everything that makes them powerful up inside. In Thelma, we find out that like her abilities go way beyond just moving stuff with her mind. She could be a god. And there's a metaphor there that, of course, I think we can all appreciate. That our potential is constantly stymied, and as we grow up, we need to break out of it.
Well, that sounds like adolescence.
Yeah.
You feel like you have magic powers, and you might even be God.
Right.
Because your adolescent ego takes over.
Exactly. The metaphor is fine. It's a good-looking movie. But it's a story about, passion that is bottled up. And even as the story progresses and there are confrontations, it never really gets let out. And I kept thinking, like, am I missing something here? Is this like a potent metaphor for how you can sort of live with this? And I think the film is trying to be this classy art house version of a much more primal, adolescent, emotional storyline that requires a bit more of a gut punch than I think Thelma is willing to provide.
Or at least a release of some kind.
Yeah, there's no catharsis in it. And that could have been creepy or scary, or there could have been a point to it. But the way that the story plays out, and I won't tell you how, but the way that the story plays out, you get the distinct impression that if someone else had directed it, it would have been there. We saw this before, and we had a big disagreement about this. The movie It Comes at Night.
Okay.
Which you loved.
I did. I liked it a lot.
I found it very, very rote. I found all of these elements of this post-apocalyptic story about a family living in a plague-torn near future, paranoia ripping everyone apart, and disease might infect members of our family. I've seen that so many times before that simply doing it in a very objective way, as if you're the first person to ever do it, and holy crap, now we're taking it seriously, right? Yeah, but it still needs to be interesting and do something different, and I'm not seeing it here. I'm not seeing the passion there. I think Thelma is competently crafted, and I can see what other people like in it, but I gotta tell you, if you've read Carrie, if you've seen any of the Carries, I think you're gonna, even like the lesser ones, I think you'll kind of see what's missing here and what's keeping it from being great. So I'm not a huge fan of it, sadly, even though a lot of people are really raving about it.
I have a screener for this one, and I do intend to see it, so I'll disagree with you in the future.
All right, last new release I want to talk about, and I'll keep it real short, because I just want you to explore this movie for yourself. It's a new movie called Mayhem, directed by Joe Lynch. Joe Lynch directed the awesome Die Hard in One Room Everly, starring Salma Hayek. He directed Knights of Badassdom, which got taken away from him in post, but is still a very entertaining movie. And this is a good double feature with the Belko Experiment. The Belko Experiment was about a bunch of people in an office, and they get trapped in their office, and they're told they have to kill each other if any of them are going to survive. Mayhem is about a bunch of people who are trapped in an office, but they're under quarantine. A virus has been released into the building that makes everyone completely incapable of suppressing their id and repressing their desires, and makes them more violent and more sexual. So everyone is just doing horrible things all the time. And the protagonist is Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead, and Samara Weaving, who you might also have seen in The Babysitter recently. And they have just been pushed down so far before the virus even is released that when the time comes that they finally have an excuse to kill everyone they don't like, who has destroyed their lives and their career, they do it. And there's not all this hemming and hawing about, oh, what's the right thing to do? This person's the most moral, therefore they're the one who's going to survive, right? No one is. They're all infected. The heroes of the movie are also infected with the same rage-inducing, like, just the virus is just everywhere.
The death and sex virus.
Yeah, and that could potentially have been just chaos and catastrophe and too much stimulus, violent overload. And yet the characters are so fun, they're so funny, they're so interesting, and they're so driven that it really, really works. And it plays like a lot like a video game where every level of the building, there's like a new person in middle management who is like running that level with an iron thumb, but now they get to actually act as violently as they want to, and you have to finish them off in a boss fight. It's really cool. It's really fun. If you like the Belko Experiment, I would argue Mayhem is better. It's one of my favorite horror movies of the year.
The Belko Experiment was kind of in the middle. It had a lot of fun with its violence, but it didn't have a lot to say about its violence.
I think it got too wrapped up in the machinations of it. Yeah, Why is this happening? And I think that was ultimately a lot less interesting than what was happening. And Mayhem, the excuse is real simple. Virus. No conspiracy, virus. Doesn't matter. We don't have to ask any other questions than that. And as a result, we're just free. We're free to enjoy the concept rather than question the concept. So Mayhem, I think, is more entertaining, and I think you're going to have a real blast with it. It is in very limited release. I believe it's on VOD or iTunes, and it's totally worth checking out. Yeah. So let's do real fast. Murder on the Orient Express. What's your review?
That's a C+. I like that one a lot.
I had a lot of fun with it, and I hope we get more of this version of Poirot. I hope it does okay.
Well, it did tease a sequel at the end.
Well, because Poirot had many adventures. Poirot, yes. That's not a spoiler. But yeah, I'm going to give that a C+ as well. It's just it's great. It's fun. It's a beautiful, entertaining film, and I highly recommend it. Let's see, Daddy's Home 2. C-. It's. I know everyone's just like, oh, it's something you see with your family or your kids. There are better things.
You don't have to see crap with your family.
You don't have to see everything. It's just because it's not. This isn't a good version of this, is what I would argue. Let's see, 3 Billboards.
C+. That's a really terrific flick. A lot of important stuff, but also really funny.
Let's see, Thelma. I'm going to give it just a middle of the road C. It's too competent and too well made to say it's bad, but it just did not have the impact on me. However, I know a lot of other people I respect who really dug it. So if it sounds like your bag at all, maybe check it out.
Well, if it's anything like It Comes at Night, I'll probably dig the heck out of it because I really like that one.
Well, maybe that's the case. There you go. That's where I come from. You can use that to make your decision. And then Mayhem is fantastic, and it's so damn entertaining that I had to give it a C+. I highly recommend it.
Let's do our double feature.
It's time for the main event. This is what you were here for. So
those are some good aperitifs. Now it's time for the meal.
Yeah, now it's time to just really sink in. And some of those movies aren't playing where you are, or ticket prices are expensive. This is stuff you can just sit down with. You can rent it somewhere. You can have fun. So we asked you to vote for a bad movie for us to review in our very first episode, and we kind of front loaded a lot of the really famous epic bombs.
Yeah, it's from like the last decade and a half.
Mostly,
or so,
yeah. Just the stuff you've heard of. I mean, or just notorious cult films like No Holds Barred was on the list, and Garbage Pail Kids was on the list.
We polled you for a list of titles, and then we had you vote on a truncated version of that list.
Yeah, we narrowed it down to 5.
And this was the first one you guys chose.
And this was a runaway. People really wanted us to review this, and oh, you jerks. why would you do this right off the bat? What were you thinking?
And here's the sad thing. I've seen this film 3 times.
I've seen it twice now. And it's got a reputation for a reason. We're going to be talking about a little film called Battlefield Earth. Battlefield Earth came out in the year 2000. It was directed by Roger Christian, who was probably best known at the time for being the second unit guy on The Phantom Menace. He was a protege of George Lucas.
So it makes sense to give him a sci-fi.
Oh yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And it was a passion project by John Travolta, who at the time was a big star. Like he could still command a movie. He was still doing real well.
He was in one of his many ascendancies. His career seems to go in cycles, and this was one of his ascendancies. And this film actually triggered a descent.
From which he has yet to come back from.
Fully. He's done a few good roles since then.
Couple of spikes, but yeah.
He was at his highest right before this happened. He decided to take advantage of that, do this passion project, and it was called Battlefield Earth.
Yeah. Battlefield Earth is based on a novel written by L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard is, of course, most famous for being the founder of Scientology, a religion of which John Travolta is one of the more prominent members.
And has been, in recent years, actually been getting a lot of exposés. There are a lot of films and documentaries and a lot of actors who are leaving the Church of Scientology talking about a lot of shadiness that goes on. It's very self-based. It's very financially based. And it's about sort of curing inner pain in this vaguely psychological way, but
yet the church is very famously anti-psychology.
Yeah.
No, here's the deal: we are not experts in Scientology. We're not religious scholars. No. We're not going to tell you what it's all about. You can research that for yourself if you're interested. But it's noteworthy for Battlefield Earth, partly because, again, it was made is an adaptation of a novel written by the founder of the Church of Scientology long after the Church of Scientology was founded. This novel came out in 1982. So John Travolta was already a Scientologist.
Way after Dianetics.
So this is an interesting thing where the founder of a church also wrote a sci-fi novel not that long ago.
It is significant though, because a lot of what the church believes in terms of like where a lot of our inner negative energy comes from is extraterrestrial in origin. So that we have negative, evil extraterrestrials invading Earth and just sort of staying here and kind of
oppressing humanity.
Oppressing humanity, and humanity kind of breaking through that is very based in a lot of Scientologist beliefs.
Yeah. Now the movie itself was considered a relatively big release. It received it had toys. They threw some money at it. It's got a pretty good cast. It's got John Travolta, Forrest Whitaker, Barry Pepper, back when that meant something, like right after Saving Private Ryan, when it seemed like he was going to be. I mean, he's still a good actor, but it seemed like maybe Barry Pepper's going to be the next big thing. Like this is a good potential breakout role for him. They threw some money at it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And it's a sci-fi epic about aliens came to Earth around the turn of the century. They conquered it in minutes.
Yeah, it was really easy. They have interstellar travel. They're called the Cyclos.
Yeah.
And the Cyclos have conquered Earth, and they've inhabited Earth for 1,000 years.
Yeah, it's the year 3000 as we begin. And they piss me off because they call it 3000 AD. And I'm like, it's called AD 3000. Take a history class.
Always get that wrong in movies.
No. You're thinking of...
BC comes after. Yeah. AD comes before. Yeah. Anno Domini. That's what it stands for.
And if you're going to use the modern derivation, it's Common Era. Common Era does come after. And so does BCE, before Common Era. AD comes first. It's AD 3000. That's how the grammar... Okay, we're getting off track.
The year of our Lord 3000.
So it ticked me off from the first frame when they said the year is AD, the 3000 AD.
And even that first frame is hard to watch because it's very green. And green is this weird sort of this neon glowing color is this motif that the director decided to go with, which is ugly on the eye.
There's this weird aesthetic. I think what they tried to do, because Battlefield Earth is a very ambitious production. You've got aliens and alien spaceships and teleporting and all, the remnants of human society that's now all overgrown with weeds and falling apart, and
that stuff looks really cool.
That stuff kind of looks kind of neat. It's a big production, but it's actually on a relatively small budget for this sort of thing. Now, at the time, the budget was given at, I want to say it was about $77 million, about 75, whatever.
Okay.
And apparently, the production company, Franchise Films.
Oh,
Franchise Films, Franchise Pictures. I didn't write it down. Franchise Pictures. They were sued successfessly for inflating their budgets.
Wow.
So they said, apparently, Battlefield Earth cost somewhere around $75 million.
Doesn't look like
it. And apparently
yeah.
they spent about 40.
Wow.
And boy, does it look it. This is not an expensive looking movie.
They committed fraud. They just pocketed that extra money?
The lawsuit went through. Again, I can't make that distinction. I haven't looked through it, but they lost the lawsuit and they owed a shit ton of money to everybody.
Well, and that makes sense because the film doesn't look like an A production. It looks kind of cheap.
It looks like Warrior of the Lost World, but with some CGI.
Yeah, there's a lot of the scenes. There's a lot of really claustrophobic close-ups, and there's not a lot of open wide shots of big vistas.
A lot of it takes place in factories, just the inside of factories.
And the makeup on the aliens is terrible. It's a bad design, and it just doesn't look like anybody's wearing it well. The Cyclos are all supposed to be 9 feet tall, but they only do this by putting these big weighted boots on the actors and giving these gigantic hair pieces of these long dreadlocks.
They look almost like Cenobites with dreadlocks. That's kind of the aesthetic that they go for.
These big long leather coats, and they have extra fingers and long fingernails, but the extra fingers don't move because they don't have sophisticated enough special effects to do that.
It's like if you watch the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies, especially the first one, the Thing's gloves, the pinky, there's no articulations, or anytime he closes a fist, his pinkies are pointing out. It's just not great costuming for one reason or another. So and
they can't breathe Earth's air. They have to breathe. their atmosphere is flammable. It's kind of dumb.
It's flammable
kind of a
when
dumb
it comes it's not just like you light a fire, because there are fires. It's when it comes to the contact with radiation, which also doesn't quite work. There's a lot that doesn't
what did their
quite work.
son do? Anyway. So they have to breathe by attaching these things to their noses, and it looks like their noses are running because they got these big ropes hanging out of their nostrils at all times.
It's not a cool look.
It's not a good look, and we have Turl, the head of the Cyclos in the year 3000, played by John Travolta.
Hamming it up, giving a big old performance.
Swinging for the walls and missing miserably, because this is not a fun performance to watch.
I learned to conquer galaxies when you were just learning to spell your name!
Like
leverage!
It's like you know who Frank Gorshin was, but he wasn't actually...
Frank Gorshin had subtlety to his overacting.
Like, you can tell he's going for, like, the Batman villain. And I think the filmmaker was, too, because there's a lot of Dutch angles. Like, everything's kind of a little bit askew when we see the bad guys.
Roger Christian apparently said, I couldn't cite the exact quote, but he's basically said the movie, almost every angle in the movie is a Dutch angle, which is just basically, normally when you put a camera on a tripod, it's level to the ground. A Dutch angle is when you just
shorten one of the legs.
Yeah, you tilt the camera a little bit, so it just looks like everyone's a little askew. And when you do that sparingly, you can create really dynamic compositions, because, oh, wow, everything's a little different now. Oh, my God. How dramatic, how suspenseful, how exciting.
They did it on the old Batman program very famously.
Yeah, or the Third Man. Classic movie with Orson Welles. Actually, that would have been a good double feature. But
what we chose is good.
We'll get to the Third Man at some point. But the Third Man was this classic film noir with Joseph Cotten and Orson Welles, and it uses a lot of Dutch angles. So many that acclaimed filmmaker William Wyler sent a package to the director of The Third Man, Carol Reed, with a spirit level, like you use in construction to make sure things are level. And he was really like, I just wanted to make sure you had one. But in this one, it's weird because they use it so much, and it becomes their overall sort of visual aesthetic. And I don't think they appreciated that the human eye adjusts to it. That's what we do. We adjust to, like, you go into a room with weird lighting, eventually the weird lighting no longer feels weird. Your eyes adjust to it, and it becomes the new norm. The canted angles, you watch Battlefield Earth, after a while, might as well just kept it level after a while. It no longer has any impact whatsoever.
Well, they overuse it so much that it looks like they're trying to make every scene equally important, which is one of the worst things you can do to a movie. Yeah. And when a new scene starts and they're putting it at a Dutch angle and nothing of interest is happening, the audience picks up on that bad filmmaking right away. This is not an important scene. Why are you doing this? My eye is being pushed out of the frame now. I just don't want to look at the screen.
What I love is that we've been complaining about this movie for, I don't know, like 10 minutes now. We haven't gotten to the plot yet.
Okay, the plot of this movie, Barry Pepper is a modern-day human who...
postmodern day. It's the year 3000.
Postmodern. It's the year 3000, and human beings are essentially cavemen again.
Yeah.
They scrounge for food, they don't want to get anywhere near the Cyclos. Those that do are enslaved and are forced to work in the mines. Okay, interstellar travel, why do you need human beings to work in a mine?
Also,
this doesn't make any sense.
Let's talk about this.
Okay.
The Cyclos are on Earth to mine the rarest mineral ever. Gold. Which, I'm willing to accept on this level. Somebody like, oh, gold? Maybe it's rarer everywhere else. Maybe that's why Earth was so valuable. We have a lot of it.
This is the only planet that makes it. Hurts to say.
Fine. Okay, I'm willing even to let that slide. It's been 1,000 years and they haven't got it all. They have interstellar travel at 1,000 years to look for one thing on planet Earth.
Here's something about the Cyclos. They're really they're like Ferengi, but extra petty. Like
how do they get more petty than Ferengi?
They're incredibly greedy, but more than that, they like to sort of manipulate the bureaucracy to screw each other over. So I'm willing to bet that the idea that was not fully communicated by this movie is that somebody was dropped off on this planet, Turl, as a punishment, and you have to stay here for X number of years using only human servants as your miner. It's like the 5 obstructions. Like, sure, we could beam the gold out in a second, but we have to punish you by keeping you here for decades using just human labor as your means of extracting gold. Go.
Google the 5 obstructions. We're not even going to tell you. Just Google it.
Okay.
It's a weird... Don't even do it. Let him do the work.
It's a great film. I love the 5 obstructions.
Okay. So Barry Pepper is called a greener, and he is called that way because he believes that the grass is always greener. He wants to leave his tribe. He believes that the demons they've been afraid of their whole lives, which they've never actually seen because they've been hiding so well, are fictional. So he's going to go off and find greener pastures. There's a Roger Corman movie with the exact same plot, but I couldn't tell you which one without ruining the twist ending. So watch a bunch of old Roger Corman movies.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So kind of eerily close, actually. But of course he ends up getting himself kidnapped by the Cyclos. But Barry Pepper is kind of unusually intelligent. He's way more motivated. He's clever.
What's his character's name? Say it. Say his character's name.
I don't even fucking remember.
Johnny Goodboy.
No.
Yep.
I didn't even pick up on that. I knew it was Johnny. I couldn't remember his last name was Good. Oh my god.
Johnny Goodboy.
Oh,
his name is Johnny Goodboy.
So through a series of complex machinations, it turns out that Turl, who hates his post here, is now stuck here, and so he comes up with a plan to take a huge vein of gold in an incredibly irradiated wasteland that the Cyclos can't go to, and get humans to mine it for him. In order to do that, they'll have to make one human super intelligent.
So he can teach and luckily they have an intelligence machine.
Yeah.
They kind of lean him back in a chair. Well, I've seen the Lawnmower Man. I know how it works.
Why do they need it? This is already like a military outpost. How many kids do they have?
You hook someone up to a virtual reality machine. You beam light into their eye, or like Street Fighter. Notice these are all bad movies with this conceit. You beam knowledge into somebody's head, and all of a sudden he's really intelligent, and now he knows how to operate machinery, but he's smart enough right away to know that he shouldn't reveal too much.
I liked this one bit where he's talking about Euclidean geometry, and I'm like, why would the aliens give it the American name, or the human name? Why would they, oh yeah, this is Cyclonian geometry. I realize that's shorthand, but it's the sort of thing that the movie gives you a lot of time to think about.
Well, and they have, translators. They put translators on their heads.
Well, they don't know who Euclid was either.
Okay, so once again, give the film the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it took that phrase and turned it into the closest human equivalent.
I love this moment where Turl finds out that he's going to be stuck on Earth for another 50 cycles.
Which I'm guessing is years.
Or some close equivalent there, too. And then with endless options for renewal, because they milk it. They give we've decided to keep you here 50 cycles with endless options for renewal. With endless options for renewal. With endless options for renewal. And you keep thinking he's he's gonna go mad and just kill everyone in the room, but he never does. And it's just the movie is so convinced of its own bigness that I don't think it realizes, again, it feels like a 1950s sci-fi movie. It feels really simple in its premise.
Which L. Ron Hubbard wrote back in the early years. He was a pulp novelist for the longest time. Why he decided to do the same thing just in, how long is the book? 1,300 pages?
Well, this is only the first half of the book.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be the first part of a 2-part epic. That did not get made because it did not do very well.
But yeah, Johnny Goodboy is now super intelligent. He decides to fool Turl.
Johnny Goodboy.
Johnny Goodboy. So he's been tasked with going unsupervised into the wasteland to get gold and bring it out to Turl, and he's able to sort of negotiate with Turl. And so his plan is to break into Fort Knox, which is still shut after 1,000 years.
The aliens never bothered to look around.
This gigantic store of gold.
Well, the aliens have this hubris. They assume humans are completely incapable of anything. So I guess I get it, but that's a lot of gold.
Well, surely they have some sort of gold scanning device.
They use it at the beginning of the movie.
There's gold around here.
They can see gold in a mountain. They can't see it in a building.
You don't think they could track that from orbit? Why don't we just go there first if we need the gold? So he breaks into Fort Knox.
So in order to get gold, so that he can take all the time they were supposed to be using to mine to plan a revolt using Harrier jets that are 1,000 years old and still in perfect working order.
So at this point in the movie, you realize that a caveman has duped an alien by breaking into Fort Knox, but is secretly using Harrier jets, and you realize you're kind of watching a Calvin and Hobbes comic.
Tyrannosaurs and F-14s.
Some kid is just making the, and then the cavemen take care of and the radiation makes their entire planet blow up.
Like if Axe Cop showed up, it would be brilliant. Everyone would love it. But it's not. It's so sincere.
It's not at all self-aware.
They think it's a big deal, and I get there's stuff here you could have played with. The idea of aliens conquering Earth, and yet it becoming a bureaucracy.
Yeah,
That's something people have played with many a time before, and it's as effective as it ever was. Because
look at the Ferengi, for goodness sake,
and we can
on
relate
Deep Space
to it.
Nine.
We can relate to that because we know bureaucracy. We know how lame it can be and how dehumanizing it can be. We can appreciate the plight of the oppressed. Not most, but like a significant amount of the great dramas ever told are about oppression and overcoming oppression, and that works too. Every single thing that they ladle on top of the basic premise makes it more and more ridiculous. But it's on every level. It's not just, the dialogue is lame, but at least the production design is good. Like, none of it's good.
Yeah. And
none of it works.
By the time you get to the end, where the cavemen and Harrier jets are bombing the alien enclosure where their safe atmosphere is, like it becomes this just almost this reel of complete chaos where you can't tell what's going on at all, and it's nothing but breaking glass. And it feels like a sequence that goes on forever and ever, where it's just glass shattering and falling down on people and people diving out of the way. And there's another scene where the glass shatters. You pay attention to the editing in that scene, and it really is just like the same 4 shots reused in the same sequence over and over and over again. It gets really super repetitive. There's no tension. There's no actual excitement of destruction. The sound design is really bad. Like you can't really... brace yourself for all of his crashing, smashing noise. It's just sort of this.
It looks like a cheap.
noise.
It looks like a cheap sci-fi channel series now.
Yeah,
now we would say, "Oh, that's so cheap," even for Sci-Fi Channel.
And also then introduced this late in the movie is the technology that these aliens have to teleport back to their home planet.
Oh no, that was before. People
did they introduce that before?
Yeah, in the beginning. You zoned out, and I don't blame you. But the idea is that aliens are able to teleport stuff back to their home planet, which you'd think they'd come back more often.
Yeah, if they can do that.
Like, fuck it, I'm taking off for the night. I'll see you guys later. I'm going back home to Cyclo and say hi to my wife. They never talk about that. I guess maybe they do.
That could be their commute.
Yeah, like, I don't know, like... The worst commute I've ever seen in a movie is still the remake of Total Recall, when you have to commute through the center of the earth.
Yeah.
And they just put you free fall through the center of the earth, people just reading their newspaper, and I'm just like, there has to be a better way! There must be a better way!
The shortest distance as the mole digs, as it were.
This goddamn movie. Here's the thing about this movie, and this movie has a reputation for being one of the worst movies ever made. It's not.
Well, I mean,
it's bad.
We've seen much worse than this.
This is not unwatchably incompetent, but what this is one of those movies that has so many big names attached to it, and even though like there was that whole business with the budget, still an expensive movie. It's still $40 million. It's not super cheap. Like, they had money. Like, there's some like this. It's not The Room. No. They had money to throw at problems. It's just you can't imagine people looking at any of these things and saying, "Go with it!
Yeah,
this is perfect!"
There are certain movies, like Showgirls is one of them, Death to Smoochie is another one, where you can tell that this couldn't be failing as badly as it did without a huge amount of imagination and ambition. John Travolta was clearly trying to do something very, very big.
Yeah, very passionate
this was his
about
pet. He didn't direct it, but this was his pet project, and he was really passionate about bringing sort of these ideas of L. Ron Hubbard to the masses in this big sci-fi epic. And each decision that was made was so bad, but it was still so passionately defended that it just made it onto the screen. And by the time it reaches the audiences, all you can see are bad ideas. And, audience are saying, how did this make it to the big screen? I think what makes it kind of fun to watch, if you're going to watch it for fun, is that ambition, is
someone has
appreciating
to believe in it.
The depth of passion that went into something so misguided.
I saw The Disaster Artist last night, and we'll review that when it comes out.
I haven't seen that yet.
I'll just tell you right now, I thought it was great. But like one of the things that I think the movie really appreciates is that the reason why certain bad films endure and that we still watch them even though they are inept or incompetent or there's something really wrong with them is that we can connect to the people who make them. If they feel
the external narrative,
if they feel like a hack job, there's no reason to care why it's bad. But you can see in something like The Room, where Tommy Wiseau was clearly dealing with some internal anguish that he had no idea how to articulate, and you can see it in Battlefield Earth, where clearly John Travolta in particular was super passionate about this, but whatever he had built up in his mind, Battlefield Earth does not translate to anyone else. Like, no one else was like, yeah, this is fantastic. Like, I never heard anyone say it's great. I heard people say it's not that bad. I just said it's not one of the worst movies ever made. That's not glowing praise. But, like, I've never heard anyone say, no, it's really misunderstood. You don't understand why it's brilliant.
And I haven't even heard John Travolta on this. I would love to hear him say, well, I think it's great. He doesn't even have to defend it. Just say, I think it's great.
That would be fine. He's allowed.
This is what I wanted. Yeah. This is the film I had in my head. I think this is a great film, and I will watch it.
Yeah, he's allowed.
He's allowed. It's his passion project, and that would at least lend some sort of credence to what we saw.
Yeah,
because it was born by his passion, but he's ignored it because it was a big bomb. Nobody saw this.
I think at the time there were stories about just like he would like go to press rooms and say, "So, what'd you think?" And like no one answered, and it's like, oh, awkward. So. Battlefield Earth is as bad as you've heard. It is. Again, it's not the worst. We'll talk about worse movies. Oh, we will. But it's really bad.
And the fun scenes of John Travolta chewing scenery are just too few and far between to make this sort of a good.
He's not the protagonist. Yeah. It's just this really kind of generic sci-fi rebellion story with not very good visual effects, even at the time. Like sometimes you look at like. Oh, well, at the time that was the best they could do, and you can kind of get into it. Here, it's like, even at the time, I was like, this looks like crap.
Well, what was like another mid-budget sci-fi film from the late 90s?
They really weren't making a lot of them, honestly, like that level of...
Yeah, Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, but that was like an AA production.
Here's another notoriously catastrophic production. This one, the director is uncredited, and other directors came in to help fix it. Supernova.
We were talking about this the other day.
Supernova, starring James Spader and Angela Bassett. And it's a mess, because you can tell people, 8 different people edited it thinking it was a different movie. It looks pretty cool. Like, the production design is kind of neat. Like, they're actually, it has an aesthetic that clearly people had a conversation about, and that some people with taste said, do that. There's something salvageable in that. Here, again, it just looks cheap.
Yeah.
It just looks really cheap. And it's a shame, because wouldn't it be nice if any movie was good? But I'll tell you this right now. Even if it was just baseline competent, no one would still be talking about it. This movie endures because it does everything wrong. And that doesn't make it good. It makes it kind of fascinating. And I would tell people, if you're looking for a bad movie night, there are way worse movies you could do than watch Battlefield Earth with a group of friends.
Yeah, I suppose if there's chemical enhancement, as it were, involved, then
which we do not endorse.
I didn't say what chemical. It could be Doritos. Those are chemicals.
Sure.
Then it might be a fun thing to watch.
Dorito-induced.
Dorito enhancements. If you have enough Doritos and enough friends over, then Battlefield Earth is going to be fine.
There you go.
I think most fascinatingly, it functions as a good object lesson for this weird Hollywood cult that John Travolta was kind of a part of, which was explored very deeply and kind of ambiguously.
In our double feature.
In our B feature.
Our B feature is a movie called The Master. The Master was directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, the director of Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Inherent Vice, There Will Be Blood. He's one of our more acclaimed filmmakers. And this is one of his kind of least penetrable movies. It's a very difficult movie. It is also incredibly fascinating, and it is, at least partially, based on the life of L. Ron Hubbard. It is the story of 2 men, one of whom is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Lancaster Dodd is his name.
Great name. Yeah. And he is a wealthy man in the 1950s, early 1950s.
So it's right after World War II. So yeah, I guess
late 40s, early 50s.
He meets the main character in 1950. So,
yeah, it's still the post-World War II era. World War II is still a scar on the men in this movie that is yet to heal. Lancaster Dodd is a rich man who has come up with, and the movie's a little ambiguous about how much he believes in it, a system that is building a lot of traction amongst certain people, calls it the Cause, and it's about regressive therapy, it's about being honest with yourself, but it has very cult-like tendencies about very repetitive behavior, about conforming to a group think and a group dynamic, and he is accumulating a certain amount of power. And into his life comes another man,
Freddie Quell,
played by Joaquin Phoenix, as some kind of universal monster. Like his gait and his growling voice and his very tragic psychology just make it seem like he would have been so perfect as a Frankenstein monster in some movie.
The way I see it is Lancaster Dodd he talks a lot about sexuality, and there's a lot of sexual talk and how about you have to rid yourself of all of these like impulses that are inside of you and live a little bit more cleanly. So he's all Apollonian intellect. He's just head.
He has a speech about how he supports marriage, and at one point he marries 2 people within the cause. But marriage is a dragon that must be tamed, and once you tame the dragon, you become in control of it. And but what we discover, of course, the film is that he talks a big game, but he is just as frail. And he is just as in search of a master as anyone else.
He has no mastery over... Like, he has this sort of superficial mastery over people, but in meeting Freddie Quell, who is a walking groin... Oh my God. He's a walking alcoholic groin.
I know, he's a sex addict is what he is.
He's an alcoholic and a sex addict, and he has no other impulses beyond those things.
Yeah, he's just pure primal... He's a caveman, honestly. Is what he is.
He shows no other desire or direction or thought toward anything but drinking and sex.
No ambition whatsoever.
He talks, but when he talks, he only does it to sort of kind of intimidate other people. That's his only other impulse. Like, there's a scene early on where he's taking somebody's picture and he's just sort of like pushing a hot lamp toward him, just out of spite, really.
It's honestly like it's kind of comical, actually. Like, he's just some sort of weird agent of chaos. He's like almost like you can almost see Yakko Warner doing this in a bit to some annoying customer. The difference is the customer did nothing wrong. He's just being mean. But unlike something like Daddy's Home, where we're supposed to laugh at the meanness, we're sort of fascinated by what makes him mean. And the movie, it never really gets super intimate with them, except for maybe one scene where they're just yelling at each other. They're always kind of... The idea, I think, is that this world after World War II, when violence was used in order to sort of restore order to the universe, and everyone was sort of a cog in a machine, now they're free. And you can do whatever you want. But what do we do now? And everyone is really, really lost. Freddie Quell has no purpose. He just bounces from job to job, screwing everything up, awkwardly coming on to anyone in front of him. And Lancaster Dodd, I think he's just as lost, but he's richer and he's got a better way with words, and he has come up with what feels like a total scam, which is able to give him the idea that maybe he is in control of his fate. But what I think is really cool, and I don't think I fully appreciated it the first time I saw it, is that you realize as you watch the movie that his wife, played by Amy Adams, she's in charge. She's in charge of everything. She's in charge of Lancaster Dodd.
She seems to have a better grasp as to how this should function as sort of like an organization. She's the one who's kind of holding it all together, whereas he's just kind of floating ideas and trying to fold them into this very not well-defined philosophy that he's trying to put together for himself.
Yeah, he
wants to be seen as a philosopher king, but he doesn't have the philosophy to back it up.
And there's a couple of great bits, and I do a really good job of this, where he keeps giving speeches to these rooms about the cause and why the cause is great, and you're just, when no one is challenging them, you're watching the movie, and it's just like, doesn't sound too bad. I can see that. That doesn't sound too bad. But then what happens is, at key moments throughout the film, there's like 2 or 3 times where just someone has an intelligent counterpoint, and he turns into a gibbering mesh. And by the end of those discussions, he ends up being just as brutish, just as infantile as Freddie Quell. He's able to just yell obscenities. That's all his argument is reduced to. And I love this bit in the movie where he has completely exploded in front of everybody, and they have retreated to their hotel room, Lancaster Dodd and Amy Adams, and Amy Adams is giving a speech to him, just to him. And I think it's kind of subtle the way that they do it, is you realize he's typing, and he's typing out his latest manifesto, and she's giving a speech. But what you realize is his typing stops whenever she stops talking. And you realize that she is able to actually articulate what he is feeling, and that maybe he is just as lost as Freddie Quell. And it's just these two guys who are kind of fighting each other as they come together for a certain form of dominance.
Yeah, well, mastery, and essentially mastery for what at that point was the soul of America. There's actually a lot at stake here, and I feel like a lot of this film only functions if you can kind of accept it as metaphor or symbol. There are some characters that I'm not even sure if they're real, including Amy Adams. I think she might be sort of the sense of order within him in a lot of ways.
Maybe.
But yeah, this film is very much examining that post-war ennui that was going on throughout America, which is something that Paul Thomas Anderson is clearly interested in exploring, especially with his previous film, which was There Will Be Blood, about the dark impulses in America's power elite in the past that have essentially trickled down to the evils of the present. And I think sort of corporate greed is what is the child of There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
And how all it takes is one powerful, resolute, soulless person to get the ball rolling in America's vice that will just keep it going, rolling ad infinitum. And Master is taking something a little bit more complex. It's taking America's own pride in itself as an evil. And Lancaster Dodd is trying to turn these dark impulses into something that can be managed.
And if you look at it, you can look at Freddie Quell as the sort of the baseline nature of humanity, which is nothing but primal need. It's nothing but just keeping a roof over your head and perpetuating the species. There's something just that innate force that Lancaster Dodd cannot control. He no matter how much you can ladle society and oppression or rules or even quality philosophy, if you want to call it that, and at some level we're just animals, and he cannot deal with that.
I want to compare Freddie Quell to Alex DeLarge from A Clockwork Orange. A character who is not redeemable. There's nothing beyond that level.
I don't think Freddie Quell does anything quite as evil as Alex DeLarge.
Alex DeLarge is a lot like he takes pleasure in just cruelty, and Freddie Quell doesn't have those thoughts. He just wants creature things. But in the same, they're both equally untamable. Like Alex DeLarge, the only way to get him to behave like a decent person is to brainwash him.
And they kind of try to do the same thing with Freddie, and it doesn't work.
And they try to do the same, and it doesn't work in either case. Alex DeLarge points out that he's actually more useful to society as this evil scapegoat, this sort of tool that we can wield, because we can't rein in that evil. He's just going to be evil. And I think Freddie Quell is this part of not just human consciousness, but specifically the American consciousness that just will never, ever be, quelled.
Oh my god, I just got that.
Holy,
oh my god, I just got that.
I'm sorry I had to spell it out like that.
Wow, how did I... Wow.
He is an
I love a good pun,
being.
Oh my god. It's a good movie.
Dodd is the German word for death, if that means anything to you. But,
no, it's.
I guess Todd is the German.
It's
word
a
for
really
death,
good movie, and honestly, even if you just want to look at it on its like nuts and bolts parts, because obviously there's a lot of subtext going on, but like
it's nothing but subtext. It's impenetrable. It's really difficult to watch for a lot of people.
There isn't a lot of not a lot of plot going on. It's not about like inciting incident and then action and then resolution. It's not about that. But if you just want to look at its component parts, first off, it's gorgeously filmed.
It's shot on 70mm.
And it's just impeccably beautiful. The acting is incredible. There's just this one scene where Joaquin Phoenix's character and Philip Seymour Hoffman's character have both been arrested, and they're in adjacent jail cells, and it's just one shot of them screaming obscenities at each other, and it's kind of the whole movie in a nutshell, and it's a beautiful piece of acting from both. And that in and of itself is just absolutely incredible. But yeah, it's a difficult film in some ways. But I think if you try to look at it, here's the key. This level of lost human psychology, people just looking for anything to latch onto, is at the root of so many of the systems and organizations and governments and religions and everything that keep society going. At some level, they were made by human beings who had very serious flaws.
Very, very fallible human beings.
Yeah, and that could be everything. That could be literally any religion. That could be literally any government. You could see that as subversive if you want, or you could just see it as, the world seems like it makes sense, but we're kind of only piecing it together after the fact. You start looking at the history of it, and you start just looking at just it was just people doing whatever they could to feel like they mattered. And sometimes it worked.
I'm reminded of a Dilbert strip where Dilbert says, I believe the universe is full of mystery, but we can understand it. And Dogbert, the cynic, shoots back, I think the universe is far too large and complicated for our minds to really comprehend, so we make up these false ideas like time and cause and effect just to make sense of it.
And that's probably true. There's a lot of...
Dilbert crosses his arms and says, well, that's what I was raised with. Dogbert says, that sounds cultish.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's true. With the way we perceive the world is based off of what we've been told the world is. And I think a film like The Master, if you look at it the right way, can sort of start peeling away the layers a bit.
That struggle to make sense of the world and the chaos that it's all based on.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I think if you just look at it as, in some weird way, we got Battlefield Earth out of this. It's a really weird double feature. It's a really weird double feature. I would actually almost recommend watching The Master first. And then, because I did it the other way around, and I think I would actually recommend watching The Master first, and then take a moment, have a sherry or make a sandwich or something, and then sit down with Battlefield Earth. One, to just sort of relax your muscles, but also to just go, it's kind of weird how this all happened, isn't it? It's an odd thing.
There's these weird things that came up out of post-war America.
So we have, that's our first double feature. Our next double feature will be next week, and you can vote on that right now at Schmoville. What we're going to do is the second place winner of every poll that we do will carry over to the next week.
Yeah.
So last week it was Garbage Pail Kids, so you can vote for that again. But you can also vote for Clock Stoppers.
The Jonathan Frakes film about children who can stop time with a widget.
Super Mario Brothers, the movie, which I know you're all excited about. Mac and Me, as opposed to just Mac.
All right. Which E.T. totally ripped off that movie, by the way.
And a movie that we need to make sure we can find it, but it's totally going to be on the poll. Cool Cat Saves the Kids.
I had never heard of this thing.
Neither had I.
But evidently there's an online community that really is obsessed with how bad this movie is.
It's kind of cool because these are all movies that even if I haven't seen Clock Stoppers, for example, I've seen the others, but I know of it. But it's interesting that cults kind of bubble up.
Yeah.
And you can go, I didn't know that was a thing now. Ooh, I get to discover something new. Interesting.
I wish that would happen with Dangerous Men.
I think it has. It's not huge, but I think people know that one. I mean, there's people know about...
We'll talk about Dangerous Men
eventually,
time,
but we talk about films like, Dangerous Men, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Some of them are kind of big, and some of them are kind of simmering under the surface. And if you actually get someone like, hey, you ever see Blood Moon? I'm like, yeah, I've seen Blood Moon. It's the best serial killer kung fu movie ever. set in the 90s, looks like it was shot in 1982. Terrible on every level with
consumer grade cameras
with a magic cop, a cop who does magic. Super weird. Yeah, I love that movie. No one talks about it. I keep trying to build a cult and it never happens. Someday. So you can vote on that, and based on what you pick, we will pick another double feature, and hopefully we can sort of bridge that gap between the highbrow and the lowbrow. That's kind of what I want to do here. That's my goal, because I think when I tweeted about I'm watching Battlefield Earth right now, isn't this observation weird? People are like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, well, because a lot of reasons. One, it's kind of entertaining in its own way, but I think if you only look at the best quality stuff, it can skew your perception about what is acceptable, and also the best quality stuff gets kind of ingrained and canonized, and it's harder to say what it did well because it is Citizen Kane, it is Last Year in Marienbad, it is The 400 Blows. But it's easier to say what bad movies did wrong, and I think you can be more constructive about what you learn from a movie if your brain is working like, what happened?
Well, and in film schools, if you're looking to make movies, watch bad movies more than you watch good movies, because you can correct a bad movie.
Well, I think you need a baseline of good movies.
Yeah.
I think
you need to watch the good movies, of course, but
then after a while...
If you're in film school, all you watch is Ingmar Bergman movies, all you're learning is how to make an Ingmar Bergman movie.
Yeah.
All you're learning is how to imitate something that somebody else already pioneered.
And a lot of good art starts that way.
Imitating Ingmar Bergman isn't a bad place to start, but if you watch... and 4 Ingmar Bergman movies, and then you watch Batman and Robin, or some other just notoriously notorious clunker.
Yeah, don't focus on just the difference in quality. Focus on the difference in creative decisions.
Yeah, and you will be able to watch the bad movie, and correct it in your mind, how it would be edited, who you would cast, how it light, and all of a sudden you're becoming a filmmaker. You know how these things work better.
Yeah, your
actually
neurons are firing.
Analyzing it a little bit better.
All right, so this has been a very long episode. There's something else we wanted to...
It's our debut. It's
our debut. Yeah. There's something else we wanted to do this episode, but I think we're going to save it for next week, because we had a lot of people ask us when we said that we were coming back with a new podcast that was going to do movie reviews, are you going to review all the movies that we missed between when the B-Movies podcast ended and when Critically Acclaimed began? So we made a list, and this is only new release movies. Movies that came out between the first week in August and now that we didn't get to review on a podcast, and it's 48 films.
And that's between the two of us.
That's between the two of us, but that's still 48 movies. That's a lot. So what we're going to do next time, in addition to whatever you pick in a poll and whatever new releases are out, we're going to do a lightning round where we try to review all of those movies in a couple of sentences.
Yeah.
We're just, a lot of people
one episode, just get them all out.
And I think it'll be good for maybe some of our new listeners to sort of get a general sense of where we're at and what we like. And it'll be like this huge primer all at once. So it'll take a little too long, especially now that we're in about an hour and 40 minutes into this episode. But we do have some letters.
Okay.
Right off the bat, and I think we want to get started on that. Now, if you want to email us, criticallyacclaimedfans@gmail.com. Send in your thoughts, send in your refutations. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Do you have an observation that we didn't think of? That's always great. It's lovely to learn. Again, you want to send us debate topics, ask questions about how films get made, how Hollywood works, how film criticism works, how the industry functions, our own personal tastes, anything at all. Again, we're very, very open. And we'll answer as much of it as we can. So we have our first wave.
We have our first wave. And here's the very first letter we got, and it's a controversial one.
Oh, good.
The title is Hollywood. And what a dark word that is these days. This comes from Chris W. Greetings. Very recently, a swath of perverts in Hollywood has been revealed. More would probably have been exposed since this was written.
That's actually true.
Indeed it has. Yeah. Has this revelation changed how you view certain movies, actors, and directors? Controversies have always followed some in the industry, Gibson, Woody Allen, etc., but I'm beginning to feel like maybe no movie is safe out there that doesn't empower some bad people. What's your feeling on this whole situation, and can you watch a spacey film now without feeling icky? Best of luck on your new show, Chris.
That's a complicated issue.
And the answer is no. I don't think I can watch a lot of movies anymore without having to amend it in my brain. It's always going to be lurking back there.
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey, great actor. I liked watching him for many years. Now I know what he did, and it's kind of going to be difficult to watch a lot of his films with the same light.
Yeah.
Same with like half of the movies released in the 90s, thanks to Harvey Weinstein. He was a giant in the business. He changed the film industry, I would say, for the better. Both in the business and aesthetically, with a lot of the indie boom that he was doing with Miramax.
And he was a horrifying demon lurking behind the scenes of some of the most celebrated movies of that period, and the others as well. And it's really repulsive to think about. And the list tragically just keeps growing. And so, it's disgusting. And here's my thought. I was on another podcast, and someone asked me about the age-old debate. Can you separate art from the artist? And I'm not sure it was very articulate, so I want to kind of revisit that now. Because I think two things are true. I think that it is technically possible to separate art from the artist, at least in the abstract. We do it every day. We hear a song on the radio, we don't know anything about the people who sang it, and we decide if we like it or not. So it's technically possible. But what I'm increasingly aware of, and I really do think it's important, is that you don't have to. You get to decide for yourself where that line is drawn. And you get to... So if someone says, well, you know, I still love The Usual Suspects or whatever. Technically they're allowed. And you're allowed to say... You're under no obligation to give the movie a pass. But at the same time, movies are a collaborative medium. Kevin Spacey and a lot of these other filmmakers and producers who are such prominent figures in them, they may be at the forefront of a lot of these films, but hundreds, if not thousands of people work on these things that maybe didn't do anything terrible. Or maybe there's a situation where someone terrible worked on it, but in a smaller capacity, and maybe, you know, you ask yourself, should I feel just as bad?
If like the best boy or the key grip or somebody turns out to be some sort of horrible criminal.
Well, here's an example right now. One of the people who played an X-ray technician in The Exorcist is a serial killer, convicted.
Yeah.
It's that's true, and he didn't have a major part to play in the movie. He's barely in it, but that's in there. And you think about just like there's all of these people, and you know nothing about them, and you can talk yourself out of loving cinema at all. I have, I think a lot of us have had some real heavy moments right now where we're just like, God, I don't even know if I trust anyone anymore. I mean, at least not.
It also becomes incredibly sticky for us as critics because it's actually our job to look at just the art and not criticize the life of the artist. So if an outlet says, go review the new Woody Allen film, that's what we do. We look at the Woody Allen film. Now,
I think there's a line that can be crossed. I think we do get to decide where that is.
We do get to decide, yeah.
I was asked a while ago if I could review the new Louis C.K. film for an outlet. And I said, based on everything that's coming out, I don't think I fairly can.
Yeah, right now. The view is a little too colored.
There may come a time when I can look at it without vomiting a little in my mouth, but at the moment I can't.
It's really difficult to remain objective in that sort of way. A critic can do it. We can kind of knuckle under, but even if I were assigned, like, you have to review I Love You, Daddy, I guess I could. But it would be incredibly difficult. Also, there's the controversy of, by reviewing this film, even if you give it a pan and you say what a monster Louis C.K. was,
are you not endorsing it tacitly by giving it attention?
By reviewing it, you're giving it publicity. Yeah. And that's another thing that we as professionally have to deal with. So there's a lot of sticky things going on with our profession in Hollywood as it stands in late 2017.
I think of it a lot like I think of tearing down monuments to Confederate generals or war heroes, or if you want to call them that, or whatever. There's the idea that because we're tearing down this statue, we're tearing down the history. The history should remain.
The history does remain.
The movies should be archived. They shouldn't be burned all of a sudden. But I'm okay. I'm not okay with taking out history. We need to be able to access these things and look at them, and maybe time will change them, and we'll be able to learn something really interesting because we have these records of performances and art that were made by some really terrible people, along with some very good people. But I'm totally okay with tearing down the monuments to these people. I think if you want to continue to argue, well, Seven is still a good movie, even though this person in it did something really terrible. Okay, I can handle that. I'm also okay with putting an asterisk next to it. I think that is perfectly reasonable. I think, if you want to look at someone like Alfred Hitchcock, who was a notorious self-admitted creep, who did some really, really terrible things to many of his actresses. He also made some very important, very influential movies. You can't delete him from history without leaving this huge weird space where did all of this other stuff come from? Well, it came from Hitchcock. So you can't ignore him altogether. But if you want to say, and he was a creep,
right?
And he did all of these terrible things, and that's always going to be part of the narrative, I'm fine with that. But these are decisions that are going to be very personal to a lot of people over time, and we're going to have to decide for ourselves
in terms of how you want to personally react to that. We can't tell you.
No, we can't. The one thing I'll invite everyone to think about is, if your knee-jerk reaction to an accusation about a celebrity or anyone, politician even, that you liked before you found out about that, is to knee-jerk defend them, ask yourself, is this about them or you? I think it's worth noting. Is it because I don't want to have to reject this movie? Because this movie was important to me. Or I don't want to not be able to think. I want to be able to watch it the way I used to before it got sullied. I think you're going to need to balance that with the actual human consequence of what actually happened. I think you might have to say to yourself, really? People suffered, and that's... I would argue that that's more important.
Yeah, you losing the enjoyment of a film is not as bad an experience as the victims of the person you're watching.
Yeah.
And you do need to balance that. And it's going to be really tough for all of us, especially those of us who like really pay attention to a lot of the careers of a lot of these people.
Yeah. And this is on a lot of our minds, and I appreciate that. And there's a lot of different facets to the conversation, but and I know we're thinking about it right now, like, oh God, can I ever watch a blank again? And I just think that right now, that's the
Maybe
real
that's
question.
That's not the question you should be asking
That's not the question
yourself.
we should be focusing on right now. The question is, how can we heal this industry and make things right?
And a lot of people are taking steps to make that happen. And a lot of... I'd like to praise all the bravery of the victims who have come forward and have been saying all of these things, because it's exposing this toxic culture that has existed since there have been...
Culture. I'm sorry, since there's been culture.
People, yeah.
Yeah, this is not new, and this is not specific to any industry.
But that these people are coming forward has sparked a wave of change, or at least an intention to positively move forward to create a culture where these things won't happen again. Yeah. It's a pity that it had to happen for so long and so prevalently with so many people. That's terrible. At the very least, we can make a culture where it's not going to happen again as a result.
Yeah.
That's the
where there is no
that's the silver lining to this.
There should be no safety for that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
They behaved horribly, but it's okay because there's no reason.
Yeah.
None.
Anyway, we have other letters.
Yes, we do. Thank you for writing in.
Thank you for writing
in.
Thank you, Chris W.
The reason we didn't address this, because this has been the elephant in the room, like all of this stuff really came out between our podcast, and we waited to address it until this letter because we knew we had the letter coming.
Yeah. Anyway, this one comes from Bob the Love Goat.
Okay.
Hey, Bob the Love Goat.
Hey, Bob.
He's written to us before.
Yeah.
It's been too long, gentlemen. Welcome back.
Thank
you, Bob. Let's just say I'm eagerly looking forward to your review of the epically awesome 2006 masterpiece, Yeti, A Love Story. Bob the Love Goat has been a big proponent of Yeti, A Love Story for the longest time.
Yeah. It's on the list of things you can vote for at Schmoville.
But I think the campaigning is up to you, Bob.
You're going to have to convince other people to
sell
vote
other
for
people. If it gets enough votes, we'll do it. I hope it will make it into one of your polls soon. Now my question is, what if the voters choose that week some other film? Does that mean that the other options are permanently taken off the list, or will they get worked into the rotation? They'll get worked into the rotation.
Yeah, like I said, the second place will get worked into the rotation the next week, and then we'll cycle the others out on a semi-regular basis.
If something goes out, we'll bring it back. Yeah. So don't worry. If it's voted out, it doesn't mean it's gone forever.
We're going to start doing like some more thematically related things. Like you might notice that all of the nominees for this second week are all kids' movies. Because there's this whole...
some sort of link. Yeah,
there's going to be some through line a lot of the time. Yeah.
It'd be difficult to choose if they were all too different.
Yeah.
Also, to eliminate the excuse of not knowing where to find it, Netflix/DVD.com has it available to rent. This is where I got it from. Okay. It's on Netflix. In addition, I will purchase it and send it to you.
Don't have to do that.
Or divert my rental to an address of your choice so that you can watch this if need be.
You do
yes,
not.
millennials, I am one of you, and I still rent physical media. The quality is superb, so deal with it.
You do not have to do that.
Look,
we have our own resources.
We have our resources. It's fine.
We're professionals. We have a lot of DVDs. We have access to DVDs. We're good.
We live really close to a really great video store.
Yeah, one of the best in the country. We're okay.
Anyway. Does this new podcast mean that Witney has to go see The Last Jedi? Then we get to hear him whine about it for an hour.
It does.
Yeah.
He does have to see The Last Jedi.
I will have to see Star Wars The Last Jedi.
We have this reputation of
I might love it. I don't know.
That's the thing. We don't know. Like, we have this
I'm
reputation.
not a Star Wars guy, but
we have this reputation with some people of being anti-Star Wars. We're not. I love a lot of the Star Wars movies. I'm also very critical about some of the other Star Wars movies. The franchise just doesn't get a free pass from me.
It doesn't get a free pass, and the culture around it kind of turns me sour more than the films themselves.
But that's more about the constant deluge of Star Wars. It's not the fans, it's not the movies, it's the idea that Star Wars is every day something we have to talk about.
Exactly. The conversation is what I'm sick of.
Yeah.
I actually quite like the first two movies. I like the first one the best.
Yeah. I love the original trilogy. The Force Awakens has grown on me over time. I still think it's got issues, but I haven't
rewatched it. I still think it's sci-fi Tiny Toon Adventures, but
can see where you're getting at.
Yeah, seriously, all the characters have junior versions of themselves in this new reboot.
No, that's true.
They can still interact with the old versions.
I don't think that's
Tiny Toon Adventures,
but I don't think that's bad. I think it's just a weird observation.
Anyway, love the work you do. So glad to have you back on the digital airwaves talking about movies.
Thank you.
He says, say this next part with a Maine accent. You can't get there from here, Bob the Love Goat from the backwoods of Maine. I don't know what a Maine accent sounds like.
I don't either.
So I just read it. My northern,
can't get there from here.
Ignorant Southern California accent.
Okay.
And here's our last letter. It comes from Luke from London.
Oh, nice.
Hello from London.
Hi.
Hey guys, just wanted to say congratulations for finally getting the old show back under a shiny new banner. Seriously appreciated the banter between you both and the honest and often hilarious criticisms of films great and terrible. I honestly never heard such finely tuned critiques of the medium anywhere until I found your podcast. And was gutted when it was canceled mere months after I discovered it. Oh, I'm so sorry that
timing.
Came in right at the tail end there.
There are other great film critics out there, and we'll help you find them if you need be, okay?
Also, you can still get those back episodes.
For now. They will vanish eventually.
It's been a truly painful venture to fill the void of the B-Movies podcast, so thank you so much for being awesome, and thank you for bringing your voices back for all the fans and the rest of the world, even if I do disagree with Bibbs on his views of Saving Mr. Banks. Thanks again, Luke London. I think we're on the same page on Saving Mr. Banks, you and I.
You and I are, yeah. Well,
we're two of, like, the big haters of that movie.
It's a mean movie.
It's a really mean-spirited...
It's a movie about it's a
pro-corporate anti-artist movie.
Yeah. It's about how, hey, we trampled all over everything the artists loved about their work and told her, like, we basically mansplained her own book back to her. And the movie is just like...
And now she's grateful for it. Isn't that great?
And the movie argues she's happy now because now she's wearing pastels. Shut up.
Really, just punch that movie in the crotch. It is like
movie.
So morally wrong.
We have passionate opinions about some movies,
and you know, all this evil stuff is coming about Disney, the corporation now too. So
the whole thing with them blacklisting the LA Times
because they revealed how badly they were stiffing the city of Anaheim in an expose. So,
which had nothing to do with the film critics.
Nothing at all.
The film critics didn't do an expose.
And all the film critics in a day came together and said, "Okay, fine, no awards. You get no award consideration from the critics groups.
Not even nominated for anything.
We're not going to talk about if we can't see them. We're not going to talk about them. You get no publicity from us." And they said, "Okay, you're invited back."
Yeah, we got Star Wars coming up. They
folded like a paper hat. It was just.
It's been a weird couple of months, but we are back. Critically Acclaimed is back, and thank you so much for listening to our first long epic episode. Our future episodes will hopefully be a little bit more focused than this. As we try to, like,
it's a new format. We're finding our feet.
Yeah, and if you have any thoughts about the format, like, would you rather us get to the double feature first instead of, like, second? We can talk about that.
Input is appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to figure out, because we had an old way of doing things, and this is a new way of doing things, and we're going to figure out a way to do it well. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, everybody who stuck with us from our old podcast to the new one. Again, feel free to leave us comments. That'd be cool. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, on the Schmoes Know iTunes feed, which has a whole bunch of other great shows. Everything from the Movie Trivia Schmoedown to the main Schmoes Show to Top 10 to the Meaning Of. There's a ton of great programs, so listen to them all.
Leave us a review there that gets listeners toward it, just like on the B-Movies podcast. Leave an iTunes review that gets listeners to us.
If you haven't reviewed it before, that'd be great. But we're also, if it's more convenient for you, you can listen to us on YouTube on the SK Plus network. It's technically a video, but you'll just see an image. You don't get to see a video of us talking, but that's one way people like to consume podcasts, and that's something you can do right now, and you can leave comments there, and we'll take a look.
I hope the video is like a slow pan over still pictures of us.
It's not.
So like the Ken Burns approach, like soft music plays in the background.
We can try working that out for a future episode. Okay. That's how it is. But again, you can email us, criticallyacclaimedfans@gmail.com. We'll read your letter on the air. If it's long, we might have to,
truncate it down. Yeah,
but we want to get to everyone's letters and we want to give everyone an opportunity to have a voice on our podcast, because my philosophy is everyone's a critic, and I mean that in a good way. We all have our tastes, and we all are trying to articulate those tastes, and we're all trying to reach out to other people, and I think that's kind of the beauty of it.
Everyone's a critic, and if we work together, we just all become better critics.
I think so. If we share like what we love and what we dislike, and if we can find a way to do it, it's okay to be passionate. It's okay even to passionately dislike something, but we can be better, and I think we've all
about articulating those things.
And I think it's a growing process, and I think a lot of us were young and we were more passionate and mad about things, and as we get older we realize how silly that is, and we just need to be better about being positive.
That's another way of saying that we're old. You and I, we're old.
We're getting there, but I'm actually enjoying maturing. I like being
adulthood is not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be when I was 15.
I seriously, seriously, like everyone, grow up. It's great. It's so much better. I highly recommend it.
Hashtag adulting.
But again, you can find us. I'm on Twitter at William Bibbiani.
I'm at Witney Seibold. Witney Seibold is spelled weird. There's no H in Witney, and Seibold is spelled with an EI.
Yeah, WITNEY If you want to listen to more of us, we have another podcast. It's not on the Schmoes Network. It's called Canceled Too Soon, and you can find that on iTunes, Stitcher, anything really. And we review television series that lasted only one season or less. This month, we're only doing TV shows that were about DC superheroes that didn't last more than a season. And this week...
Turns out there's a lot of those.
There's a ton. And this week, we're going to be reviewing The Flash, the live-action version of The Flash.
Which is well remembered by many people. It's actually kind of popular.
And we'll talk about all the ins and outs of that. So we'll be back next Sunday with the winner of your poll, a film that goes with it, and reviews of films like Justice League, Roman J. Israel Jr. Esquire.
And Junior Son.
And the new animated film, The Star.
Wow, we get to watch The Star.
Like, we do.
That's going to be great.
Isn't it going to be great?
It's going to be so great.
It's going to be so much fun. Oh, my God.
Barf. I mean, great.
So, everybody, thank you again for listening. And I want to just give a quick shout-out again to Clutch Douglas for doing our awesome theme music, which you are hearing right now. You can check them out. They're on iTunes. They're on all of those wonderful band sites. Check them out. Yeah, I guess that's all. So, never forget, everyone's a critic.
Everyone's a critic. That's our new sign-off.
To the midnight show. I'm sorry, what?